Are you following the Rudy Farias case? It is a case that is just, it has so many twists and turns, rights, what could be wrong, you just don't know. And I've been looking at it for 2 days. And so far, this is what I've gathered. In 2011, Rudy's brother, who he said was a father figure to him and the glue that kept the family together, he died in a tragic motorcycle accident. It was very traumatic and devastating for Rudy. He really loved and cared about him. And in 2014, his father, who Rudy says he wasn't close to, he actually put on his Facebook page that he wished he had a father and son relationship with him, but it still hurt that even though he didn't know him that well, that his father was dead. His father was a Houston police officer, and he had taken his own life. He was involved in a ticket scheme in the Houston Police Department, and while they were doing an investigation, they were investigating him, and he did not want to face the music, so he ended it. And to make matters worse, Rudy was suffering from depression. I mean, of course he was. He had his brother taken from him instantly, and then a man that he may have thought to want to know one day was now here. So any hopes and dreams he had about his father, they were no longer. So I can see where depression would come in at. So Rudy goes to walk his 2 dogs in 2015, and again his dogs return, but Rudy didn't. Janie Santana, Rudy's mother, she would put in a police report about her son, saying that, her 17-year-old son disappeared. Now, I did read that he was actually 18 years old then, and for some reason, instead of her giving the detectives a picture of a 17-year-old, she gave a 14-year-old picture of him, a picture of him looking much younger. She said she believed that the public would be more sympathetic to trying to help find her child. So the disappearance was now on the news and everywhere, and a year goes by now, and Rudy's still missing. She goes on a news program, and she does not want to show her face in fear that she could be harmed, because she believes now Rudy has been sold into sex trafficking. She cried. Her voice was cracking. She was very emotional. She was afraid that she would never see her son again. So where is Rudy? Years were passing by. Rudy was still associated through the Houston Police Department that he was still missing. There was a large billboard in Houston to remind people daily that this young man was still missing. Police actually stopped by the home of Janie Santana and Rudy, and there was a young man there, but she said that young man was her nephew. Matter of fact, Janie Santana got stopped a few times with her nephew. Her nephew even got stopped by police. But life continues. There were GoFundMe accounts, fundraisers, all in the name of trying to find Rudy. So now we have almost 8 years, and Rudy's still missing. The family, they start calling the police and telling the police that Rudy is not missing, that he's home with his mother. There was even a grandmother living in the house at the time that they say she had dementia. So when the police asked her, or whoever would ask her, she would say, I spoke with Rudy. Rudy's here. But they just chalked it off as, she has dementia. She's an old woman. She doesn't know what she's talking about, but she did. Rudy was never missing. He had been alive this whole entire 8 years, and he had been living with his mother. He would stay in the vicinity of the neighborhood, and he would visit certain relatives, and he went by the nickname Dolph, a nickname that he used. So he either uses Rudy or Dolph, but it was definitely Rudy. And I looked at pictures of Rudy when he was with the police on June 29th. And they're there, even though he's covered up, and even in interviews he has his face blurred. They're there. I just won't put his real face on this video because he doesn't want it to be shown. So I will respect that. But he looks the same. A little bit older, yes, but he looks the same. On June 29th, 2023, the boy, Rudy Farias, that went missing in 2015, after 8 years, he was found.
It was like living there. Were you allowed to leave the room? Was she holding you there against your will?
She never locked me in or, handcuffed me or anything like that. I had free will to leave. It just felt like brainwashing, honestly. It just kept confusing me, just the way, she would manipulate me into saying, oh, you're going to get arrested.
So for 8 years, Janie Santana had her son in this home, and certain family members knew he was there, and they were calling the police. But when the police arrived, she pretty much told Rudy to say he was someone else's name, a made-up name. During this time, there were horrible things that were being done to keep this young man to stay inside this house or to not venture out too much. And he would say in details some of the things that had happened. And he didn't like it. He wasn't comfortable with it. And he just really wanted to go. But I'll let him say it in his own words.
He says an officer pulled him over once when he was driving his mom's car, but says he was told to use a fake name. He says he's been kept in isolation even when family members came over.
It's like I lived in prison. It's like I lived in jail my whole life. I just wanted to be free. I wanted to have my own job. I just wanted to live my life.
Activist Quanell X made serious allegations last week, saying Farias told him and HPD investigators that his mother sexually assaulted him. Farias says his words got twisted. He says while mother-son boundaries were crossed, he was not sexually assaulted.
I don't know, I used to have to sleep in their bed sometimes. I don't remember why. Boundaries she would push or make me uncomfortable when I would say stop. And she's like, well, why? What did I do? I didn't do anything wrong, And then I would just be like, okay.
The DA's office has declined charges and asked for further investigation. Police Chief Troy Finner says they need to finish that investigation and would not say whether police believe Farias is a victim. Would you call yourself a victim?
Yes.
I definitely think that Rudy is a victim. I think that unfortunately he's been thrown pretty much in front of the world. This went more than nationwide. This is worldwide. And yes, I do think he is a victim. And I personally do believe that he was sexually abused by his mother. Why are you an 18, 19, 20-something-year-old man in bed with your mom? It doesn't make any sense. And he even said in previous interviews, and I have all the links to the interviews in the description box, he's even said he felt uncomfortable and he didn't know if it was right or wrong. But she did go over a lot of the boundaries. That's what he said. So I do believe that there was sexual abuse. And I think, again, he was thrown in front of the world and they just want him to admit to it. He probably hasn't even processed it in his head that he was sexually abused. I know personally, a grown man that at the time he was around 37. And for some reason he confided in me. And he told me that his mother's boyfriend had abused him and his older brother when they were younger. And then him being 37, he's telling me? And I said, why didn't you tell your mother? He said, oh, she would go back with him. They would break up and they would get back, but he never told her. We had lost contact for years. He ran into my son and told my son to give him my number, but I got his number instead. Anyway, I called him. He was not trying to rekindle anything, which is what I thought. He thanked me for listening to him, not judging him, and telling me, you were right. I should have went and spoke to my mother, and I did. He said they cried together, and I asked him, what made you tell your mother now? He had found out that the man who's a doctor had died. And it took that whole entire time, now he was in his 40s, to tell what happened. This is a whole different situation with Rudy. This has been just thrown. Everyone that knows Rudy and everyone that didn't know Rudy, we think that something could have happened between him and his mother. And he, again, probably hasn't even came to terms with it.
I was able to meet Rudy Julio, and I was able to talk with him without her present with one detective for an hour and 15 minutes. And he shared horrific details of what happened to him. And he told us the truth about where he's been, what's been going on, where he's been hid out at, the things his mother did. And he kept saying, I don't want her to go to prison. I don't want her to go to prison. The things he told me, I broke down in tears. The things he told me, I broke down in tears. She was giving him drugs. She was punishing him by locking him in the room over and over. She convinced him that law enforcement wanted to put him in jail, that law enforcement were looking for him because he ran away, and that because he ran away, he was going to go to prison. And she convinced him, and then giving him psychotropic medication, giving him all type of drugs, and convinced him that he was in trouble. And so she convinced him to use an assumed name because she had been raising money to look for him. GoFundMe, something like that. And she had a financial incentive not to have him found and reveal who he is. And on top of the sexual abuse, no doubt about it. And I started crying. I couldn't believe it. I tried to hold back my tears to be strong for him because I didn't want him to see that. I just started crying. No mother. The most sacred thing to a young man is his mama. I don't know one man to tell you the most sacred thing to him is not his mama. But to hear what she did to her son, that's the damn devil. Oh, he ran away 8 years ago, but he came home 2 days later. And she convinced him to hide in the house. She convinced him to not reveal that he had been found. 2 days later. I believe she believed that after a certain amount of time, people forgot about the case. And she convinced him to take on this assumed name and believe he was really the assumed name. And with a lot of drugs, this boy was abused big time with drugs. Along with, I believe, the sexual abuse based on what he said to us. This boy's been mentally tortured and physically. It's awful. That was the house of hell. Period.
So my question is, where's the mother now?
At least she's still staying in this hotel room right now.
So if the detectives were here and they
You gotta ask them that. They heard exactly what he said.
Don't you think Rudy might be in danger right now?
Absolutely. I stressed it over and over again to them. This boy's life is in danger. And I kept stressing it. And I put it on the record that his life is in danger.
Rudy has even said in an interview that he wants nothing to do with his mother. He's also said that he doesn't want to see her go to prison. Unfortunately, on the outside looking in, I mean, this is clear. It's crystal clear. Something was going on in that house, and it was sexual. 8 years, you are pretty much drugging your kid so he can be chemically dependent on you and probably more relaxed to do what you want, and you're in his bed and you're lying about things. I mean, it probably started off as, oh, I can get a couple dollars through fundraisers and GoFundMes, and now it's turned into something else. Granted, she's lost her husband and she's lost her son and the one child that she has left. This is what she does. There's also another GoFundMe that was placed, and it was actually stopped because the GoFundMe was for her. People thought that the GoFundMe was for Rudy, but no, it was clearly for her. Why does she need a GoFundMe? Why? I do believe she's a monster. And a lot of people are focusing on his age. I'm sorry, but 17 and 18-year-old, you can call them a man. Hell, you can call a 19 and 20-year-old a man. Legally, yeah, they can get arrested and go to jail. But at 19 and 20, they can't even go in there and get a beer. But, you're calling them a man. 21, 22, 23, they're young men, but they're still sometimes not mentally there, if you know what I mean. And I think she did take advantage. I read between the lines of Rudy's interview, and he said he needed someone to teach him, to show him things. And this is why he misses his brother so much, because his brother was such a role model to him, and he doesn't have anyone to show him how to do things. Why are you drugging your kid? Why is your kid in the bed with you? Why have you kept him away from society for 8 years? For your own selfish, disgusting needs. Family members are trying to get her arrested, and I'm pretty sure, or at least I'm hoping, that the HPD is trying to dot their I's and cross their T's to make sure that this woman does get some time. But they are looking into seeing if Rudy is a victim or part of this disgusting conspiracy to, I guess, get money. So hopefully he will come clean and tell the police the truth and stop trying to protect a woman that was only out for herself. I will definitely continue to follow this story as it develops. And justice for Rudy.